As we in the NDC have always maintained, President Akufo-Addo's proclaimed fight against Galamsey was the biggest scam ever to be perpetrated on Ghanaians. Today, the NDC stands vindicated, as a report authored by the German-trained cardiothoracic surgeon and former Minister of Environment and Science, Professor Frimpong Boateng, has all but confirmed our long-held opinion that there has never been any genuine commitment or any attempts to fight Galamsey by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia MPP government. The said report by the German-trained cardiothoracic surgeon shows clearly that the so-called fight against Galamsey was a charade calculated to enable top government and MPP functionaries to appropriate and take over the illicit Galamsey trade. We are of the view that the only way to establish the truth and get to the bottom of the issues contained in the Professor Frimpong Boateng Galamsey report is for Parliament to institute a publicly televised and bipartisan inquiry into this report, which essentially is an obituary of President Akufo-Addo's monumentally failed fight against illegal mining.
Thinking that we should escalate this conversation, we should take environmental justice on the international level. The level of degradation is clearly catastrophic. It's totally unacceptable. Our governments can be brought, can be held responsible.
Mr. Fuseni, I was saying, when you say on the international level, which institutions are you looking at?
The institutions which are interested in protecting the environment. Now, today we are being told that we can cut down and defoliate the Amazon. The Amazon is the lungs of the world. Today we are destroying the lungs of Ghana. I mean, we will not be having good air to breathe. I mean, people, the activities of Galamseyers will not only affect the people of Ghana, will have repercussions on other countries and the world environment. And so clearly, people must be held responsible. And I think that we should escalate it. I also support, and I've said that civil community action is very important. But the difficulty with civil community action is that, I mean, almost everybody has not been compromised. The chiefs are leading in the corrupt activities of Galamseyers. Some citizens within communities are part of it. MPP exploited that by coming up with community mining, which I agree with Elizabeth, is another form of Galamsey, of distraction. And so, let's find a way, let's reinvent ourselves. Let's find a way to stop this carnage. Government has betrayed or revealed a remarkable lack of commitment to fighting the illegal small-scale mining or mining activities in this country. And so, clearly, it is left to us as a people. And if we don't do anything as a people, the impunity with which the mining activities is going on in communities by illegal miners will perpetuate itself. And it will not matter whether it is NDC that is in power or MPP that is in power. People will act with impunity. Let's hold governments accountable.
That the activities that they're involved in are jeopardizing the very survival of our nation. I took the decision that would be a betrayal of the trust that the Ghanaian people put in me on the 7th of January this year. And as a result, we established this committee within the government to design a policy for us, not just to stop it, to reclaim the land, to let our rivers work again, but also to see how we can figure a way for all these able-bodied young men who are involved in this activity to find an alternative livelihood. So it's a package. It's a package that we have designed to try and bring this menace to a conclusion. I've said it in the cabinet, and perhaps it's the first time I'll be saying it in public. I am prepared to put my presidency on the line on this matter.
I am prepared to put my presidency on the line in this matter. I didn't say it. The president did. 2017, we're in 2023. What has happened? How did we get here? Well, today we contemplate that matter further. I beg your pardon. And it has to do with that Frimpong Boateng, Professor Frimpong Boateng report. Now, we're looking at different dynamics as far as that is concerned, because now the NDC has also waded into that conversation. And we, of course, heard the likes of the South Dai MP Roxanne Nelson Dafiamekpo pushing for Shraj to intervene, in fact, petitioning Shraj on the matter. Now, we've heard from the NDC itself in that moment of truth set up, where they call on the Office of the Special Prosecutor to probe into the matter, to prod further into that matter. They also call on Parliament to do same, a call that even before they came out to say this, we had heard the likes of Dr. Arthur Kennedy, himself a member of the MPP, a stalwart, a bigwig, say and call for, same as Professor Appiagyei Etua, law lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Ghana. Well, today we continue from that end. The NDC is also calling for a publicly televised, bipartisan probe into this matter in order to ascertain the truth. But what is the truth? The gospel truth? Is it what Professor Frimpong Boateng, former environment minister, has put out there? Is that the whole truth? How about the responses from different quarters? And I am honestly disappointed in some of those people whose names were mentioned. Some of them I actually respected. Yes, respected past, because I no longer really. If you look at, you see, it may not be the entirety of the truth, but I look at some of them, for example, and media entities they have set up and things they have done within the short space of time. And knowing from where they came, I'm not saying they were broke, but I'm asking myself, how did they do this? How did they do that? How did they do this? How did they do that? And all of it doesn't add up. And that's a major flaw in our country, because people all of a sudden acquire wealth and there's no way of substantiating where they got the wealth from, and there are no checks. We are supposed to tender our assets declaration. It's another white elephant in this country. And so we'll continue getting raped, the ordinary people, because the system is broken, dysfunctional. We're joined by the Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Alhassan Sueni. We'll also have others join the conversation. But let me make this crystal clear. If you see conversations or if you watch conversations on this show where you do not seem to have a representation from the government's end or the MPP's end, it is because we threw an invitation to them and they refused to participate in the conversation. Or, well, I don't know. Sometimes you throw it out there and you don't get anybody. I am tempted to say something, but I will not say it. So just know, if you're watching and thinking, oh, why don't they have representation from the other end? We knocked on the door. The door was not opened to us. Alhassan Sueni joins the conversation. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother, and good morning.
The line is a bit faint. I don't know whether it's from our end or your end, but if you could speak up a little, I'd definitely appreciate that.
Hello, good morning. Is it better now?
I think in the studio, we would have to work to ensure that the sound is.
Well, I don't know if it is the sound or if it is my voice. I am nursing a little sore throat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of both, because for a moment I could hear you really well just a short while ago. But that's fine. And sorry, sir, about your sore throat.
Right.
For starters, what do you make, since I've not interacted with you, what do you make of this entire Professor Frimpong Boateng report? What was your initial reaction when you saw that report?
Well, first of all, my reaction was that of vindication. I wasn't surprised, not the least, about the content. I was excited that at least one of them, not an ordinary one of them, but one who was in charge of the interministerial committee, was bold enough to put name to some of the stories that we have always known, and also to put instances and put all of that on paper and submit to the Chief of Staff. I'm sure, hoping that the President will take action. Again, on that leg, I'm not surprised that the President didn't do FOCO, because all along, and I'm sure if you check your old tapes, you'll hear me repeatedly say that there has never been a commitment to this fight against Galamsey. It was a media coalition that came together to highlight this matter, and an opportunistic government jumped at it without any commitment or whatsoever to really deal with the canker, that to enjoy the media blitz and to be in the center of the attention. Along the line, they saw the opportunity to make money for themselves and their cronies, and they pursued that. I am on record again on your show, I remember, to have challenged the President after the 2020 elections when he said that they lost the elections because of their fight against Galamsey. And I retorted that it couldn't be the case, and that they lost it because of the bias fight, the less than, assuring commitment that they demonstrated in those areas. The people are not fools. The people in those communities saw how their kinsmen were driven out of the forest and the Galamsey area, and how army men and people in uniform were used to protect the cronies of the government to continue mining. That is what the people voted against. She complained about Galamsey. Community members and elders complained about Galamsey, and they would have applauded a committed fight, a fight that was uniform and determined to rid, the forests and the lands of that illegal act. But they saw through the sham, they saw through the fraud, and that is what angered them to punish the New Patriotic Party in those communities. It's not because of the fight. It is because there was no fight. It's because they saw a fraud and they saw the sham, and that is why they punished the New Patriotic Party in their community. Clearly, Professor Frimpong Boateng's report captures all of this in different forms. The fact that the army was used to protect some companies, the fact that the very connected lawyer of this government was used to protect some people to continue to rape our forests and our land, the fact that some media groups were used
and
to
all
protect.
of that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Al Hassan?
Yes, I can hear you.
You're saying very connected lawyers, among others. Whom are you referring to?
I'm referring to Gabi Ochirdaku, of course.
So why don't you mention the object by its name?
I am assuming, you're right, I'm assuming that we all have read the report. And so it shows clearly that the people saw through the fraud and saw how very connected lawyers like Gabi Ochirdaku were used to protect people who were still engaged in illegal mining. They saw how media gurus, like my own uncle Kweku Bako, were used to protect people who were still engaged in that illegal mining. They saw how presidential staffers were involved. So clearly, all of that is just put in a formal report, which formality is ridiculously even challenged, as if that were a justification why no action has been taken on a fight that we were deceived to think the president was willing to even put his presidency on the line. Heck, then, even the president's garden in Chebi, we are told, was encroached upon. And
correct. We hear that is not correct information. At least we've heard from the MPP, the communications director, Richard Ahyangba, has spoken to those issues, and they say that is not factual.
Who do we believe? It is at this stage a matter of, who you want to believe. Richard has told many untruths in the past. And so I am not, about to believe him on this matter at this stage. I rather believe the one who knows he has so much to lose and who was leading this whole campaign and has, despite the fact that he has so much to lose, gone ahead to put this on paper and to indicate even his role in restoring that garden. Are they challenging that also? For me, the report has only come to confirm a lot of the things that we have known and heard about as far as this whole Galamsey issue is concerned. What we can do beyond this is to institute a public bipartisan committee investigation into this matter. Let the nation use this report as a fulcrum, as a pivot, to unravel all the, all the stories, if you like, the truthful ones, the factual ones, and the untruthful ones, as far as the fight against Galamsey is concerned. This is a very good opportunity for us to separate the conspiracy theory as far as this Galamsey fight is concerned from the actual happening that sometimes limits the fight that we all must win to save our environment. Let us not let this opportunity pass. If for nothing at all, the platform will serve as an opportunity for those who think they are innocent to clear their name. Let Charles Vitu come to that public platform to clear his name.
Right.
Let Kweku Bako come to that platform to clear his name. Let Gabi Ochredaku come to that platform to clear his name. Let the Charles Lee, or what's the name, come to that platform to clear his name. In fact, I wish the president himself could take advantage of that platform to come there and clear his name. Because the chairman of the Interministerial Committee, the former chairman, tells us in that report that on 3 different occasions, he reported people to the president, and even though he doesn't say it, I will conclude that, and the president did nothing.
He makes mention of the fact that Sir John, for example,
he
reported that he was the greatest danger to our
forest reserve. And
of
the president did nothing because we are unaware of anything that the president did by way of rebuking Sir John or, nothing. He simply didn't listen. He reported the senior minister, Yao Sakumaku. According to his report, the president again did nothing. And we already know that even beyond this report, Yao Sakumaku is on record to have told us how Aisha Wang could not be prosecuted for some economic benefit to the nation, clearly showing his deep involvement in Galamsey as he, facilitated the earlier release and deportation, so-called, of a Galamsey queen. So I'm not surprised that when the former chairman of the Interministerial Committee reports him to the president will do nothing.
All right, let's move.
He tells us how he reported Gabi Ochredaku to the president. And the president did nothing. So I wish that the president will also even take opportunity of such a platform to clear his name.
All right. I don't see that happening, though. But yes, we know of the names that were mentioned in this report. You talk about a public platform. We'll get to that shortly. I am concerned, though. So what should happen to these people, especially as their names have been mentioned? I mean, beyond this, if they are found complicit, what should happen to them? I want a brief answer on that because I want to get to something else tied to that. What should happen to them?
Well, if I had confidence in the president and his government, I would have said and believed it, that when they are found guilty after a probe, they should be sanctioned to serve as a deterrent to others.
But I've heard Dr. Odrosai say on another platform, GBC to be specific, or GTV if you like, that we should treat perpetrators, like the Arab world treats those who engage in drug trafficking. And even outside of the Arab world, look at places like Thailand. If you're caught with narcotics, the penalties are severe. Do you agree with him? Do you agree with Dr. Odrosai on that point?
As much as it is enticing for me to agree with him, I am unable to ignore the fact that our laws in this country may be different from the laws in countries such as he has mentioned.
Basically, that it is obvious our laws are not working. So to make it that punitive will be the only way of resolving this.
Well, that will require us changing our laws to make it punitive. But as we stand now, our criminal code may not permit some of the things that I agree with you are very enticing for us to, do to people who engage in this. Because, look, the crimes of Galamsey are crimes against humanity. It's not just crimes against individuals. It is what they do threatens our livelihood, our very existence. Apart from the effect on the ozone layer, look, sometimes in the air, when you look at the destruction that is caused to the environment, it is as if there were wounds on the skin of an animal or a human being. Like just consider the earth, a human being, and look at those, pits with water, and picture that this was a human being's body that they did that. It looks like wounds on a body of a human being. And it is affecting our agriculture. It is affecting our forest cover. And we know the benefits that people, especially who live around this forest, reserve, get from the forest reserve to sustain life. So it is inexcusable. And yes, it is enticing to want to, put people who are engaged in this to the stake. But I'm saying that we live in a country with laws. And if the laws don't permit that, I will be the last person to advocate against what...
Tweak our laws. Should we tweak our laws to reflect that?
If it becomes necessary, yes, I will be...
Are you saying if it becomes necessary or it has become necessary? Which one?
Yes, I think that, I would like us to deal with the issues one after the other. If we put too much in the basket, we will miss...
No, but I feel this is a clear point. We're going to deal with the issue per the law. But I'm saying, someone else is saying we need something beyond the law. We've tried the law has simply not worked. And I'm asking you, I'm putting that question to you. Do you agree with him that then we need to do something about our laws to make them excruciatingly painful for anybody to engage in illegal mining? Should we do that?
Then I would want us to do that. But first of all, I want us to focus on using the existing laws, if it is possible, to punish the culprits now. Because you see, if you read the report, it is not as if our laws are not even, that punitive. It is just because sometimes even the courts seem to be corrupted. And so people who are taken to the court either end up getting away, getting released, or given the list of the sentences. So, for example, if a crime attracts like 10 years imprisonment, we have heard of situations where the judges don't go for the maximum.
Yes, but
so they go for the minimum.
I think knowing what I do about the law, I think we ought to approach that issue cautiously, because wherever there's hold on. Whatever you're saying, there's always a minimum. There's always a range that is available to any judge. And the judge can decide to give the minimum or the maximum based on what he or she determines from the case. So to say that maybe they don't give the maximum and so they are in error, to castigate the courts for that.
No, I'm not saying they are in error. I'm simply asking why. Because some people have suggested that there may be corrupt reasons why they will not go for the maximum.
Okay, I think we've tarried enough on that point. I want you to address this very quickly for me. In that report by Professor Frimpong Boateng, it's not only members of the MPP, some members of the NDC are also pointed at, a DC also in the Western region, among others. I have heard from your party the calls for a bipartisan probe into this, for Parliament to take it up, and for it to be on TV, live television. I've heard of calls for the OSP to investigate the matter. If members of your party are also found to be complicit, as the report suggests, what happens to them?
We are, first of all, Ghanaians before we choose to belong to political parties. And the interests of Ghana must be served at all times. And anybody who stands in the way of that service to the interests of Ghana doesn't deserve any sympathy from anybody, whether the person is a comrade or a patron. And that should be our attitude. That is the attitude that the president has not employed. And that is why we are where we are today. Clearly, if he had Ghana at heart and the interests of his citizens at heart and was committed to protecting and saving this country, he would not have ignored some of the reports that have come to his attention. He would have taken drastic action by now against his own people. But his failure is as a result of, I believe, his love for his party and its people more than his love for his country and its people. And I, as a member of the NDC, I just don't care who is affected in this probe. If you engage in any illegality, you must pay the price. And this is not just a small, issue.
I get the point. I get the point. I get the point you're making, Hassan. Just to make tracks, I beg of you. I get the point you're making, but here's what I find interesting. In all these conversations, whether it's Inusa Husseini, former lands minister, or any members from your camp that I've spoken to, you focus entirely on this current administration. And I realize, yes, the report is indicting a lot, damning as far as this current administration is concerned. But there are members of your party mentioned. Somehow you never talk about that until it is brought up. Why?
We talk of the one with the ultimate responsibility to ensure that wrong doesn't happen. That should be our focus, and not who engages in the wrong. If the one with the ultimate responsibility is pushed and egged and chastised for not carrying out his responsibility, and he rises up to the occasion to carry out his responsibility, everyone who is engaged in that will be punished. What is the point in going for A or B who is said to have been engaged in and you see, when we talk of these things, I'm sure you have listened to us. How many times have you heard NDC people even talk about the companies that were involved? They're not talking about the companies involved. So clearly, if one NDC or two NDC people are involved, you don't expect us to focus on that. We are talking about those who were wielding influence and using that influence to facilitate the illegality. That is why you hear us mention the names of Gabi. Gabi was not mining, but he was protecting a company that was mining. How many times have you heard us talk about that company? You hear us talk about the presidential staffers. They were protecting, those are the people with the responsibility, and they are those that we pay with our tax money. They are those that the government of Ghana, takes care of, because we expect a certain responsibility, towards us. And that is why it is important that we highlight it. We get nothing going to talk about the C&J company. It is a fraudulent company, but if people who are supposed to, protect us from its fraud are facilitating it, we need to hold those people responsible. And then if they begin to discharge their duties, that company will no longer have any space to offer. That, for me, should be the focus, unless you disagree with me.
Right. Now, talking of those public platforms, you've petitioned a few, but even before we get there, just for a broader conversation as far as this Galamsey issue is concerned, we know that it's affecting water sources. Like I quoted earlier today, my own good friend, Kafui Day, and what he put out recently concerning those living along the Pra River who would ordinarily get water for basic bits, domestic use. Now they have to buy water, and that is even for those who can afford it. How about those who can't afford it? As we pollute our water bodies, we're gradually creating a national security problem. In fact, we have created it. But when it gets to the fore, we know what the consequences will be. But today there was a story in the Ghanaian Times newspaper on page 11 that made me want to highlight the issue further, because guess what? The caption is, effects of illegal mining on forests. Native tree species in danger, face extinction due to destruction of natural regeneration. And just to couch just a little bit of the story, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, we all refer to them as the CSIR, has appealed to the government to do everything possible to fight illegal gold mining, as it is posing a great danger to the natural regeneration of native species in the country, native tree species. They talk about odum, we all grew talking about odum, mahogany, kukrodria, and other valuable native species that give the country timber, which are going extinct significantly, particularly due to illegal gold mining, also known as Galamsey, in the country. That is how deep, that is how bad this problem is. We're creating such a mess, not just for ourselves, but for the generations yet unborn. They will have to come and deal with this. We've been told that if we even stopped illegal mining today, everything comes to a stop. It could take as long as 100 years for our water bodies to be restored. Yet, again, sourcing my own media colleague, Kafwe Day's post, if you look at the Parl River 7 months ago and the Parl River now, it has become even worse. I can only imagine what the turbidity levels will be like. I can only imagine what processing water like that for consumption will be like for the Ghana Water Company Limited. It is pathetic. It is cruel. It is wicked. And yet, we're all sitting. Some of us are doing our bit, the CSOs, the media, but government. In fact, I am not surprised. Later, when I come back to you, Al-Hassan Suini, I'll put this bit to you because Charles Bissu, who himself was mired in one of those exposés and moved away from being the secretary to the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, told my colleague Evans Mensah that when the president said he would put his presidency on the line, it was a figure of speech, a mere figure of speech. It was English, basically. Let me bring in, Al-Hassan Suini, just hold for me. Let me bring in Erastus Asare Donko. He is a journalist with the Multimedia Group, and he has been following a lot of these Galamsey-related stories. Erastus, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the AM show. Hello? Erastus, please unmute for me.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, Erastus. And let me just let you know that a lot of the guests we've been speaking to, from Dr. Arthur Kennedy to others, have been lauding your work on Galamsey. You may not have heard, and so I'm seizing this opportunity to let you know that they have been very filled with applause, basically, for the work you've done so far on the back of Galamsey. But Erastus, so I was just mentioning that the Parl River seems to be even more polluted this year than it was last year. So far, in the rounds that you've made since the last time you brought bottles here of different water bodies, what have you noticed in your rounds as far as Galamsey is concerned?
So, very well, and thanks for the compliments. You are speaking of the Parl River more polluted than before. I've been trying to do a follow-up to my documentary, and this time I'm focusing on the health effects and the health impact on people living in these communities. And yes, we've been to Ankobra. If you remember, I've done a piece when the Deputy Lands Minister tried to paint a picture, a false picture, that indeed the Ankobra is clean at the estuary. We went on the Ankobra, we used a boat to go for 4 hours from the estuary right to Banso, Dominase, Angulenzo, Douale, all the communities along the Volta River. And I tell you, it's more polluted than we saw it last year when I did the documentary. In fact, at Prisia, Bogoso, the catch point under the bridge, it was so murky. It looked like some muddy pool. And this time around, for the first time, I am seeing Shamfan sitting on the Ankobra. I was shocked because normally you don't see the Shamfan operators working on major rivers like that. But for us to see a point where they blocked the river at a point and they were doing the washing and everything in the Ankobra, I was shocked.
Wow.
At a place called Angulenzo, there was another point there. Over 10 Shamfan machines sitting directly on the Ankobra. When you go to Banso, a number of them. At Dominase, the same. When you go to Bogoso, the tributaries leading to the Ankobra, lots of Shamfans sitting on the river. And you had people who live within the communities boasting of it in front of our cameras, telling us that Galamsey, and you should say, literally translated that if you will not allow us to do Galamsey, this is how the river is going to look. It will even look worse. And we have this on camera. And I tell you, the number of excavators, when we flew the drone on the sides of the Ankobra, mining with impunity, it will shock you. And this is just a month ago. We went there about a month ago. When you go to the Offing, as we speak, the Offing is no longer a water body that contains life. You can count over 400. It's as if they manufacture the Shamfan on the Offing. Now it's everyday business as usual. They are sitting directly on it. All manner of chemicals running in and out of the river. In fact, when you pass through I Am Free, Wasada Dieso, through that road, there's a place called Enchenchuneso. By the roadside, the main I Am Free roadside, both sides, deep excavation, going on as if, I mean, like, there's no authority, nothing. It's so shocking, eh? And when the president talks about the forests have been barricaded and nobody is mining in the forest, I can show you evidence that as we speak, the Odaho forest, the Pamprama forest, there are people in there mining.
There are people in there. There are people in there mining as of how long ago? That you can confirm.
Oh, as I speak to you right now. If you go there, ask the locals, they will tell you there are people mining in the forest as we speak.
So what the president said,
and when you
what the president said versus what the picture is on the ground are diametrically opposed.
I don't know why the president said what he said. If it was based on intelligence, then that intelligence, excuse my language, fools the president. Because there are people in the forest mining as we speak. When you go to a place called the Merewa in Seshi, there's a forest there. There are people mining in there as we speak. And some of these people are either close to the seat of government or a seat of government. Normally, I don't mention names because, you see, there are legalities. And these people are so smart to the point that they use their surrogates to mine on the ground. They don't go to the fields. They use their surrogates, people close to them. They hire gangs, metro people. In some cases, our own military, armed military officials are there protecting them. And there's nothing anybody at all can do. In some cases, people are prevented from going to their farms just because of the illegality in the forest. You have a farm, you have people have cultivated cassava, plantain, they cannot go to their farms to harvest them because somebody is doing an illegality in the area and there are soldiers who are guiding.
So government officials, so to speak, this is what, Professor Frimpong Boateng alludes to. Government officials, top government officials, even cabinet ministers are mired in this, and you are confirming, you're stopping short of mentioning names, but they use their surrogates. They have people they use, of course, you will not see them there on the ground, but their surrogates are acting on their behalf. And sometimes, there are these...
This is not the first time I'm saying this. If you go back to my report from 2018, and I have many of them, I said those things in my reports. The reason is that we do not sit in our newsrooms and talk. We are on the ground. I followed IMCIM for a whole year under Mr. Prof, who led the IMCM initially when it started. That man so dedicated to the fight. In fact, he asked me to film everything from people who are bringing in bribes to people who are calling in from high places. And that's how come I got to know that there are people from the Flagstaff House who are mining. Because when we get to the site, you have people, big men, calling onto his phone and asking, this site belongs to me. Please, leave the place. Or, this site belongs to somebody I know. Can you leave the place for us? One example, major example, the Pamprama Forest Reserve. My father used to work with his father in that forest. So he knows and has telling us stories about this forest. Some of the trees have been standing for over hundreds of years. His grandfathers used to mine in the Pamprama Forest Reserve, but you will not see a single sign that they were mining there. All you will see are small holes that they have indicated. They call them in Komana. And at that time in 2018, you remember, the late Sir John took media men to the Cobra Forest and said they were doing reclamation. They stopped illegal mining. They were doing reclamation, put up signs over there. But when the task force went in there, we saw that indeed there wasn't any reclamation. There was active mining with about 25 excavators in the forest. We also learned that Operation Vanguard went in there and tried to stop. At that time, it was Imperial Heritage Mining with a prospecting license. They tried to stop them. They seized the excavators. On their way, calls came. They brought the excavators back and apologized.
The same imperial mining that Gabi Asari Otredako supposedly represented.
Yes. Yes. And at that time, it was an ex-W who was manning the site. There were no military men when we went there in 2018. It was this man. In fact, many task forces went in there, they were driven away. It was this man, Chum Ampofwajikum, who led the IMCIM team, which I was part, the only media person on board. We went there, they brought in cash to try to influence this man. He said no. The military commander who was commanding that particular IMCIM task force, we usually call him across. Calls came, and he said, I don't pick calls when I'm working. I remember very well. And in my interview, which I have on video, he spoke about it, that the calls are coming, but I don't pick calls when I'm on the field. I do my job first. And so they seized the excavators, 25 of them. I was there. We worked deep into the night. We left the forest around 12 midnight, carting excavators out of the forest. And the threats were there. They told this man that if you don't return the excavators, we will make sure you never come back to this thing. And true to their word, that man was asked to step aside. And that's when they brought in Ekowusi to take over. And we all know what happened.
The same Ekowusi about whom we have heard so many developments when it comes to, the excavators.
Yes. Yes. And I also followed Ekowusi's task force for a while, I think about 2 or 3 weeks. But at a point I felt my life was at stake because I'm the media person on the task force. But then we'll go to a hotel, we'll sleep over. Under Chuman Pofwajikum, he will allow me to be part of every meeting, every tactical meeting, and then they will tell us what time we're leaving and all that, and we will leave. But this man excluded me from all the meetings, and when they were leaving, they never told me. They asked me to wait, and they will leave without me. Later, they will ask me to pick a taxi and follow them to the forest. By the time I got there, they had done whatever they wanted to do, and they were done. So I decided not to follow them again. But you see, I'm making the point that these calls from big men who own these sites, in fact, no person without authority or without any sort of power behind him would dare mine in any forest reserve or even close to a water body. Do you know why? Because the forces around, the Forestry Commission, the Minerals Commission, will not allow you. They will pounce on you. In fact, at that moment, the law will work. But if you find active mining in any forest reserve, water body, what we found out was that there was a big man behind it. And so when a task force like ours went in there, they will call and they will tell you, please leave the place. This is my concession. I know somebody who owns this concession. Please leave the place. I have said it in my report from 2018, 2021 down to today. I always say it. So I don't know what the authorities want to see. It's not that we cannot fight this menace. We can, but nobody wants to fight it because somebody is benefiting one way or the other.
Before you take leave of us, I want you to share with us, we've spoken about the water bodies and the devastation, and I got goosebumps listening to you and the picture you paint from the Pra to everywhere else that you've made mention of. Our forefathers, people have said, our forefathers mined, but they did it in such a careful way. Like you said, your grandfather, then to your father. But today we're destroying everything, and only God knows what we will bequeath to posterity. But that story I referenced in the Ghanaian Times, native tree species in danger, the likes of Odum, mahogany, Kokorodua. For you, as far as the trees, let's focus on the trees are concerned, what has the level of devastation been like before you take leave of us, Erastus?
I saw something at the India Pamprama Forest Reserve that I kept talking about it in my reports. Trees felled with reckless abandon. And they did not even harvest the trees. They dumped them in the pits and they pour latrite on them.
They pour what on them?
They don't even harvest them. Latrite.
Right.
F. And you see, these are, I don't know much about these trees, but you could clearly see that every tree is a tree. And because they are perpetrating an illegality, normally the Forestry Commission should have counted the trees and then cost them, value them, and then you pay for the trees and all that. Then they take them out. But they didn't. Many of the trees were left as they are. And so the place is just cleared and nothing. And so when I hear about people saying we are planting trees, I was telling somebody, where do we really need the trees are those areas. So if we are clearing 400 trees within a month, and then we say we are reforesting, what are we doing? And let me say something about the levels of chemicals in the rivers we are polluting. In fact, my colleague J.D. Parl did some testing of the Ankobra. We ourselves, we are doing some testing, but they are not ready yet. But he did some testing, and the results were shocking. The levels of mercury, the acceptable levels, WHO standard, 0.001, we are seeing 0.016, 0.017, 0.018. At the appropriate time, I will show you the data. Lead, mercury, arsenic in the Ankobra. This is 2022. Today, if they test today, I think the figures will go up. And you know, mercury and lead, they stay forever. They stay forever. And if they get into your system, let the professionals tell you what will happen to you.
We're having so many cases nowadays.
Breakdown you get.
We're having so many cases nowadays of cancers, of kidney failure, and all of that. In fact, we ought to be contemplating this environmental terrorism. I remember Elizabeth Va of the Environmental Advocacy Group termed it as such many months ago.
I've been working with Elizabeth.
Environmental terrorism. So we should be asking ourselves, the food on your plate, the fish in your fridge, do you know where they come from? Because these water bodies are getting polluted. Do you know what Galamsey is depositing in them? All these chemical elements, erasters that you are speaking of, they bioaccumulate. And we end up consuming them into our bodies. They don't go away, like you rightly said. They don't go anywhere. They bioaccumulate.
No.
So they get into our foodstuffs.
When they evaporate, per research.
We have a little connectivity issue with Erastus. We have to get him back, so we wrap the conversation from... Go ahead, Erastus.
And so we...
Erastus, are you there?
And so, yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
So I will say finally that, yes, Professor Frimpong Boateng has mentioned names. I am not mentioning names because those calls that came did not come on my phone. They came on Mr. Chum Ampofo Ajekum's phone.
You did not get to see. You did not get to see who was calling.
No, I get to see because I'm privileged to see it, but I cannot mention names because they did not come to my phone, and I don't have the evidence. The evidence will be with him. But this is real. People in higher places controlling remotely what is going on the field. Illegal mining. And that's why this fight will never be won. In fact, the fight should start from the seat of government.
Just quickly, you're whetting my appetite. I have to let go of you. I'll do this in just a few seconds. People very high up, what people are we talking about? At the ministerial level, members of parliament, who are we talking about? And just to cap off the conversation with you, you've been out there, like you mentioned, when the IMCIM was working. You were out there with them. The president said he would put his presidency on the line. Charles Bissiou says that was a figure of speech. Do you still, as a journalist, as my colleague, do you still trust the president to deal with Galamsey? You can wrap with those two. And
no.
Did you say?
I have said it before. I'll say it again. No. Big fat no. I have not seen the kind of zeal and commitment yet. In fact, if he is really serious, Akonta mining would have been, made to face the law as we speak. In fact, if he was serious, the fight should have started from the seat of government, and by now, those forests would have been saved. And it's because of that impunity that people in higher places think they can abuse power. They can use it to amass wealth, to destroy the resource, steal our natural resources and destroy the environment. That is why we still have this. In the Galamsey area sector, when you bring down a big person who is mining illegally, word spreads like wildfire. All the smaller ones, Bamus. But when they see these people continue to mine, then they also benefit from what is going on because they know that once you get there, there is a task force. And it has passed through all the ranks from Operation Halt Operation Vanguard, from all the military teams I have followed, money. When we went to Ankwaso in 2018, Ankwaso Forest, there was a gentleman in there. I got to know that he was a former driver of John Boadu. He was felling trees in the forest and perpetrating an illegality and being protected by 2 policemen and a patrol vehicle. That man brought in 40,000 Ghana cedis to the task force that they should use it to buy cocoa. I filmed it. Maybe that's the reason why they didn't want me to follow them again.
Wait, he brought 40,000 cedis to them to buy cocoa porridge.
Oh, it's part of my reports. It's already out there. It's on YouTube.
Wow.
You see him saying it with the money in front of him. That he wants them to use it to buy cocoa. And so when you have such amounts being bandied around, and in fact, people, those cabal that are in the illegal mining fight, they are rich and they are ready to spend money.
I was asking you.
This thing.
I was asking you. Those names you mentioned. Of course, you've not mentioned any names, but were we talking about the calls you saw coming through? Who were these? Ministers, members of parliament, DCs? I mean, just give us a fair idea.
People from the seat of government, assigned of powerful people at the seat of government, military men, officers, police officers, journalists, are all in there.
Journalists?
We get calls from almost everybody. Yes, journalists. Journalists. And the calls come in. You see, when you reach the particular site, that is where the calls start coming in. Oh, this site belongs to me. It's either they know the person who is mining or they themselves own the site. That's the thing. It's either they know the person who is mining and they are pleading on the person's behalf, or they themselves own the site. And so they want you to get out. And that's the message.
Erastus, we're grateful that you took the time to join us for this conversation. I know you have to move on to other things, but thank you so much for the enlightenment and more power to your elbows. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Erastus Asaridonko is my colleague, and here at the Multimedia Group, you would find him usually reporting for Love FM. Let's go back to Al-Hassan Suini, Member of Parliament for Tamale North. You've been listening in to the conversation, and you've heard everything that has been said. Thankfully, you join us via Zoom now. How problematic do you find it where we find ourselves? The very powers that be at the top have their hands, their feet, they are up to their eyebrows in Galamsey. And this is not Professor Frimpong Boateng for someone to say it is politics. This is my colleague journalist saying it. In fact, he points even to journalists in the system who are also involved. But the police are involved, the military is involved. Part of that report by Professor Frimpong Boateng even mentions that Captain Mahama, then now Major Mahama, posthumously given that title, was killed in Denchambwase because of his protection of a concession. That is what Prof says. How can we deal with this? How? I mean, the tentacles are so deep, there's nothing you can do, is there?
Friend, let me join many others to commend Erastus for the fantastic job that he has been doing on this Galamsey. I am one of his avid followers because I see that he's one of the, journalists that have dedicated himself to uncovering all the wrongs associated with, the so-called fight against Galamsey. And he deserves commendation. I'm surprised that he's not gotten a national award yet for the work that he's been doing on Galamsey. And I want to, like you also indicated, wish him well and hope that he uncovers more, but he must stay safe. You know, when he paints the picture the way he has, you are tempted to think and agree with him that this fight will never be won. But I wish I could say this without the political coloration that I have all around me. I have a lot of confidence in the people of Ghana. And Galamsey and the people behind the illegal mining may be so connected. And as a result, it may seem like we cannot deal with it. We cannot win the war. But I have a lot of confidence in the people of Ghana. And I think that if we get the right people in authority and tax and charge them better and support them, I believe we will win the war. I don't think it is impossible to win. We all sometimes hear of the threat, but somehow we still sometimes think it is remote. It is removed from our reality. So, for example, you hear people say that we may be importing water. In fact, the last time, I think it was the former Minister of Land, John Amehu, who made reference to that research report that said by 2030, Ghana was going to have to import drinking water. Others have even come back to say we have already started importing drinking water into this country as a result of the devastation caused by Galamsey. You've heard from the Ghana Water Company, sometimes unable to, treat water that is available to them. It's not like the water is not available, but they just can't treat it because it's so muddy that it poses a threat to their machines. And even sometimes when they are able to treat it, they have to spend so much and put in so much chemicals that in the long run also have an effect on our health as consumers. So we know about these threats. We just talked about, species of plants that have been affected. And like I indicated in our first conversation, it's not just about the ozone layer. Look, apart from even the species that we talk about, there is a research report I have seen that also suggests that by 2018, so I'm sure we have lost more. As a country, we have lost about 1.34 million hectares of forest to illegal mining. 1.34 million hectares of forest to illegal mining. And this was around 2018. So I'm sure now we have lost more. We all know the benefits that we derive from these forests. And yet, when you hear reports like Erastus says, that suggests that the fish didn't just, start rotting from the head, but is actually when you get reports that just tells you that people who are expected to be engaged in the fight are those who are rather benefiting from the illegality. You are tempted to lose hope and think that perhaps we will not be able to win the fight. But once again, I want to say that if we put, there are many willing Ghanaians who I'm sure will do right if they have the opportunity. And so let's not throw our hands in despair as a result of the failures that we have seen with the people who are in charge today, and assume that everybody with the same responsibility will act the same way. I think that we still have very good people in this country. And that's why I'm saying that I hope that what I say will not be tainted with the partisanship that I am associated with. I say it because I believe that we have a lot of good people in this country who, given the same responsibility that the people we have today in charge of this country have, will not abuse that responsibility and will not, will not seek to benefit from the opportunity given, but will seek to use that opportunity to do right and to save our environment and to save all of us.
Finally, Suhini Al-Hassan, I'd like to find out from you. You've been speaking about that public platform. We're talking about a petition to Shraj by the Member of Parliament for South Dai. I'm talking about your colleague, Roxanne Nelson Dafiamakbo. We're talking about your party establishment saying they want Parliament to probe this, that in fact they want this to be televised, a bipartisan probe of Professor Frimpong Boateng's report, with those who have been cited having to answer. They are also petitioning the special prosecutor to investigate this matter further. What would be your expectations from these three fronts? Shraj, Parliament, where you are a member. You're on the Natural Resources Committee, right?
Lands and Forestry, Deputy Ranking.
Lands and Forestry. You are what? Deputy Ranking. Right. And there is also the special prosecutor. What are your expectations in that regard? What do you want to see in the coming days on the back of this conversation?
I'm happy we are having this conversation. I am also happy that all these bodies are activated to look into the matter. Yesterday, I was on another sister station, and I was there with an MPP head, OPK, David Opoku, and he agreed with me and others who are making the call that we need to have a national platform, say a bipartisan committee of parliament, members drawn from various committees with different expertise, to give a platform for people who especially have been named in this report, and others who haven't been named, like Russell and others, to tell us what they know, so that as a nation we all will follow it and understand how we all play a role, consciously or unconsciously, in the promotion of this illegality that threatens our very existence and our survival. Sometimes one may not even know, one may live in a community and may not even know how his or her actions facilitate the illegality. But when we create this public platform and invite all the stakeholders, yes, it is going to be probing in nature. We may, as a result of that engagement, get the nation educated on the, fight and what is expected of all of us to win that fight. Apart from getting down to distilling the facts from the hearsay, and then perhaps the facts, apart from being used to punish whoever deserves to be punished, will also inform policy formulation moving forward. So I think that it is important for Shraj to look into this to determine the conflicts of interest and the abuse of office and corruption-related issues. It is important for the Office of Special Prosecutor to also look at, possible corruption that has come up as a result of what we are hearing. And Parliament should also be interested in, a bipartisan probe into the issues that have been raised. It is the only way that we can get the whole nation to understand the role each of us have to play in formulating new ways of dealing with this. I have said, for example, many times, and recently I was excited to find it, justified in a research report by one John Manse, that our approach to this fight seems to suggest that we do not understand or take into consideration the different types of illegal mining. We seem to approach it as if it was a uniform operation. And so a uniform task force can deal with all the layers. For example, in my view, the way you deal with alluvial mining, which is illegal, should not be the same way you deal with the underground mining, which sometimes involves people going into old pits to bring out ore for processing. And that is another discussion. At some mining sites, you have all the processes taking place at the same site. So you will have the mining, you will have the processing, and then you will have the refining. All the three processes taking place at one site. Other situations, they are not cohabited. So you will have only mining taking place at a concession, and the processing taking place at another place, or the refining taking place at another place. You need different approach to dealing with these different practices.
Okay.
And again,
if you could make that your final comment, Al-Hassan,
yes,
time is not my friend. I'll be grateful.
There's this proposal also that perhaps we need to begin to look at introducing and regulating medium-scale mining. Because as a country, we only have the two extremes, small scale and large scale. Small scale was supposed to be, operated by locals using simple implements like shovels and wheelbarrows. But the evidence shows that the small scale mining is now encroached upon by not just foreigners, but foreigners in partnership with Ghanaians using heavy equipment. And perhaps the way to deal with it, because we have seen that with large-scale mining, we are able to regulate and control it better. So, is it time for us to begin to think of introducing a medium-scale mining concept, where perhaps Ghanaians can partner with foreigners and be regulated just the same way the large-scale mines are regulated?
Right. That's a question.
These are all discussions that can come up when we have this platform that I speak of.
Okay.
That will unearth the facts from the hearsay, and the facts used to punish those who have to be punished, and the facts used to inform policy formulation moving forward.
Al-Hassan Sunni, we're grateful for your time. Before we wrap on this conversation, in fact, as we wrap the conversation, we had Erastus Asare Donko, who actually is a journalist with the Multimedia Group. He has been doing the rounds, even risking life and limb to bring us some of the footage we see. And he painted quite a picture for us. We also had Al-Hassan Suini, Member of Parliament for Tamale North. But as we cap off this conversation, I want you to watch again what President Akufo-Addo said in 2017. This is what he said.
That the activities that they're involved in are jeopardizing the very survival of our nation. I took the decision that that would be a betrayal of the trust that the Ghanaian people put in me on the 7th of January this year. And as a result, we established this committee within the government to design a policy for us, not just to stop it, to reclaim the land, to let our rivers work again, but also to see how we can figure a way for all these able-bodied young men who are involved in this activity to find an alternative livelihood. So it's a package. It's a package that we have designed to try and bring this menace to a conclusion. I've said it in the cabinet, and perhaps this is the first time I'll be saying it in public. I am prepared to put my presidency on the line on this matter.
Okay. That was President Akufo-Addo, and the pause was intentional for effect, if you're watching me this morning. But moving on from there, when we return after the break, we are going to be going back to something that the president has, well, given his assent to. News reaching us is that President Akufo-Addo has nominated Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Tokonu, a member of the Supreme Court, as the new Chief Justice after Justice Enin Yeboah steps aside as he officially hits retirement. We're bringing you the scoop on that after the break.